guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and just a short episode today, but last year I made a video called What Heresy Will Become Plastic. It was a video in particular that was a list of my predictions, and it was basically me putting my money where my mouth is. The reason I did this was because despite my reputation for salt and cynicism, I felt that I could accurately predict the moves of Games Workshop and Forge World. I'm almost saddened in a way that I have such a cynical view at times. But the thing is, when you've worked in a large company at the top end, you grasp how they function. And what many take for salt is what I see as, well, just seeking a bit of light, a bit of truth. So, with that in mind, I want to look at how I went to see which of my predictions came true, which haven't, and, well, what is still to come. So, first things first, what did I get just, well, wrong? And really, it was only a couple of things. I predicted that the Typhon and Cerberus would, well, that they would be resin main guns on the Spartan chassis, rather than a full-blown plastic kit. I couldn't have predicted that they would actually bother to make a full plastic kit for a miniature that's so niche for the Horus Heresy. So that was a massive fail at my end. I also predicted that the Fellblade slash Fellglaive would become fully plastic kits over time, but the sponsor weapons on them going to plastic has shown me that this is probably dubious at best. Therefore, I made two big mistakes. Now, considering the video goes for 14.5 minutes, two mistakes isn't too bad, because what did I get right? Well, first call that I made was that the Vindicator versions would both go to plastic as a dual kit, and I was correct. The same with the Sicaran. I was convinced it would get a plastic hull, but that most variants would be merely the same resin turret that Forge World sells now, and I was also 100% correct on that front. I also predicted that the Legion Basilisk and Medusa would stay as they are, and eventually become last chance to buy. That last part hasn't happened yet, but we are predicting on a years long time frame here, so I think the prediction will come to pass in its entirety. I also predicted that the Damocles Command Rhino would be transitioned to the plastic Rhino kit, but become an upgrade in resin to that kit, which happened as well just a few weeks ago. I suggested that nothing plastic would happen for a long time, if ever, for the Solar Auxilia or Mechanicum, and so far that prediction has come to pass, with the caveat that I felt that some Mechanicum tanks, the Krios and the Triaros, would potentially become plastic in the next year or two. I also guessed correctly that the Mastodon would be staying in resin with the potential of plastic sponsons, which also came to pass. As for other future predictions, now that's where the water's a little more muddy, because I predicted a plastic Deredeo, and I think the roadmap suggests that I am correct on that front. I also suggested that the Aquator and Saber would stay plastic for a very long time along with the Flyers, but that they would all go to plastic in the next few years, with the Thunderbolt probably vanishing. Now, the reason I said that was because the Thunderbolt is probably 12-15-year-old sculpt now, whereas the Primus Lightning is only a few years old, less than a decade. I did also guess at a plastic Dreadcore, and I still think that's going to happen, but nothing has happened as of yet. Now, for my biggest prediction, which has not yet come to pass, but which I would still put good money on, and I mentioned it briefly in this video, and it's probably going to be what I really spend the rest of this video talking about, and that is that Forge World is going to get rolled into Games Workshop main. I think they're slowly losing their independence, and they're going to eventually vanish as we know them, instead becoming a sort of boutique arm of the company which specialises in items like Titans, which is sort of a return in a way to Forge World's roots, where they made big centerpiece models. I want to spend the rest of the episode, therefore, talking about that. Now, firstly, the removal of so much Forge World from the 40k and Sigmar game lines over the last few years, obviously the huge last chance to buy debacles that we all know and loathe, that is a huge part of this, right? The massive purge just this last week of legacy data slates for 40k also lends a lot of credence to my belief. It has been clear for some time that Forge World is just phoning it in with regards to their releases, dragging their feet constantly for whatever reason. My guess is that as the stepchild of Games Workshop, they aren't given the resources, and the people working there are likely just marking time. That is to say, rocking up and putting in just enough effort to collect the paycheck each week. Now, I don't say this to insult the staff there. Okay, let's get that really bluntly stated right now. Quite the contrary. I think it's actually a result of demoralization. Since Alan's passing and the loss of many of the best sculptors from the studio, those left picking up the pieces don't seem to have the presence or the voice within the company to be able to push a creative agenda. And with the reintroduction of specialist games, I feel that the shots are now being dictated by the corporate overlords rather than by individuals. So rather than rocking up each day and saying, "Wow, let's create a new Imperial Armor book. Oh, I've got some fantastic ideas for vehicles. Here's a campaign system I'd like to try." No, I think the staff rock up and are dictated some bland project by Games Workshop that they want done, but don't deem worth doing for themselves. Because, well, why would they? I don't really see that Games Workshop has anything to really gain at this point from releasing Imperial Armor books, because they just compete with mainline 40k's campaign books. And, well, they want to sell you everything in plastic, and if they're sinking resource into something that's hidden behind some other paywall elsewhere, it's not worth it, especially if it's in a different style. Like, Games Workshop is very sanitized, very corporatized. All their books look and feel the same. That's because they basically have a formula. So why interrupt that formula? I imagine the staff rocking into work each day at Forge World, they probably first sit down, check their emails on the computer, and then the very next thing they do is stand around the water cooler for 40 minutes with a coffee in their hand, whilst the Games Workshop staff glare at them from across the hall. Now, I obviously have no proof to back any of the speculation in this video up, but I've seen enough questionable releases and decision making, as well as such a poor release schedule in the last 7 years, to feel somewhat confident when I make this observation. Again, I want to stress, I don't say this to hurt or to insult, but rather because if you can understand what is happening within the company, then you can understand the future direction of the company. That is how I get my guesses so close to the mark. I'm not Valrak. I don't have a leaker who feeds me information from within. I am despised within Games Workshop, at best. Probably just a bothersome itch or a nuisance that they don't care for, at worst. I am not getting any free models or box sets from them, even though I'm running a much, much larger channel than most that did get a free starter set for Heresy or for 10th edition 40k. And I mean, can you blame them? If I like the box, that's the highest praise the company can get, because everyone knows I'm no simp. But if I dislike it, you know that I'd make it well known. So for them, why take the risk? This is how you, the viewer, can know that my predictions are authentic and they come from my head, not from some internal source. So I used this same methodology back in October or November of last year, thinking like a corporate dirtbag, to correctly guess the Lion in 10th edition 40k, right down to the release month. I'll even run you through the logic for that, for those who haven't seen that video and can't be stuffed finding it. And I basically said, well, here at current 40k, Sanguinius, he's dead, no good. Ferris, dead, no good. Vulcan, Corax, both not really super popular Primarchs in the Loyalist side, so that basically, well, narrows it down a bit, because you end up with Leman Russ, Dawn, and with the Lion. Dawn coming back is a possibility, but the Imperial Fists are a much less beloved legion with a lot less customization or custom codexes compared to the Spacels or Dark Angels. So it comes down to Russ or the Lion. And out of Russ or the Lion is already established as being asleep on the rock, and therefore has the better claim to being able to come back into the game, because it's as easy as just saying he wakes up. And, that's basically exactly what happened. Obviously, it was a more convoluted story than that, because, well, for some reason the company just loves convoluted stories, but that was the thinking behind it. Now, I also guessed every unit in the box set for 10th edition, based off the trailer. But that was less me being Nostradamus and simply a case of making a note of each unit seen and going, well, that'll be in the box, because the company is so devoid of creativity these days that they will never show you a unit which you cannot buy in any of their trailers or promotional artwork. So the next time you see someone jump on the internet and say, "That's Mr. Circle, he's just full of salt," maybe just point out to them how right my predictions seem to be, and that maybe, just maybe, I actually have the right amount of cynicism. Anyway, that's it for me. Mac with the Circle. Like I said, this is a short little episode, but just something for you to mull over. And if you want to go back and look at those prediction videos, you want to go back to about October, November last year, and you'll find quite a few little prediction videos I did, about 3 of them. Talking about heresies that become plastic, which Primark will return, the direction of Games Workshop in this year, and of course what I think is happening with Forge World. And this is just me touching base on that, and so far pretty much all of my predictions, except for two things out of like 24, haven't happened. So I think I'm holding a pretty good winning streak here. So chalk 1 point up for healthy cynicism. Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you for watching, and leave your thoughts and feedback below. See you on the next video.